The medieval fortress town of Clairvaux is buzzing with activity on the evening of the 16th of December 1944. American infantrymen and vehicles are frantically rushing through the narrow streets, some moving east towards the sound of guns, while others are retreating west out of the town. The commander of the 110th Infantry Regiment of the 28th Infantry Division, Colonel Hurley Fuller, orders that any man who can hold a rifle to form up and prepare to defend Clairvaux. However, many of these men are rear area soldiers who had never seen combat before. As the sun sets, German artillery moves within range of the town and shells begin exploding in the streets, scattering the American GIs. It's the first day of the Battle of the Bulge, and a scratch team of regular infantry, cooks, clerks and other rear area personnel are about to face a determined assault from German forces which outnumber them nearly 10 to 1. A quick word on this week's sponsor, World of Warships Legends, a free-to-play naval warfare themed game, available on mobile and console. Fight in over 400 aircraft carriers, battleships, cruisers and destroyers, with over 100 commanders in exciting real-time combat on over 20 unique maps in a large, active online community. This isn't a game that just requires reflexes. Players need to think strategically to win, and make best use of the large variety of ship types from 11 different nations, with more ships and missions available every 5 weeks. Jump straight into the action with an easy learning curve, and enjoy intense PvP battles ranging from 9v9 to 3 vs 3 vs 3 vs 3. New updates are launched regularly, and I'm excited to play the new limited time PvE battle type, War Tales. It features 3 unique tales, scenarios where you can team up with other players to battle bots. Each scenario has a specific objective, such as securing a control point or escorting an allied ship. Download and play World of Warships Legends for free using my link in the description to receive a huge starter pack including American Tier 3 Premium Battleship Arkansas, German Tier 3 Cruiser Karlsruhe, 7 days of premium account, 5 common crates, 10 red, white and blue camouflages, and 10 hunter camouflages. Become the hero of your own legendary tale today. Earlier that morning, Nazi Germany launched its last major offensive on the Western Front against US Army units manning the Ardennes sector. Their objective is to sweep through the thick woods and rolling hills in front of them, cross the Meuse River, and then capture the port city of Antwerp. Over 400,000 men will take part in this campaign, which the Führer believes will decide the outcome of the war. Opposite them, Major General Norman Coater's 28th Infantry Division defends the centre sector of the American line. Coater is an aggressive commander who relishes leading from the front. His finest moment came at Omaha Beach on D-Day, when he showed great bravery in rallying his men while under heavy enemy fire, earning him the Distinguished Service Cross. The task of the 28th Infantry Division is simple: delay the advance of the overwhelming German armoured punch as long as possible to allow reinforcements from elsewhere to be rushed in behind them. The 28th Infantry Division, nicknamed the Bloody Bucket Division by the Germans due to its red insignia, is one of the most decorated units in the entire US Army. Its men fought their way off Omaha Beach 6 months earlier, broke out of Normandy in Operation Cobra, and became the first American unit to parade down the Champs-Élysées in liberated Paris. However, Coater's division was savaged in the Battle of the Hürtgen Forest, and is a shell of its former self. It has been sent to the Ardennes to rest and refit in a quiet sector of the front, yet its men are unaware that they are directly in the path of the imminent German attack. Facing Coater's battered division is the 5th Panzer Army under the command of General Hasso von Manteuffel. Manteuffel is a veteran of the Eastern Front, and one of the Führer's favourite generals. He is a distinctive man who stands just 5'2" and needed to carry a shortened sword in officer training to avoid tripping while marching. Manteuffel is unhappy with the task he has been given, and considers the offensive's goals to be unattainable, but intends to try his best. Barred by the Führer from visiting the front, Manteuffel instead disguises himself as a colonel and personally reconnoitres the front line before the offensive. While there, he notices that the Americans only man their frontline positions from dawn to dusk, before retiring into houses. He decides to forego a preliminary bombardment until the last second in order to catch the enemy completely by surprise. The Aar River and its formidable bluffs is the first obstacle for Manteuffel's advance. He orders the 26th Volksgrenadier Division under the command of General Heinz Kochot to clear the area before the 2nd Panzer, 116th Panzer and the Panzerlehr divisions exploit the breakthrough and head for the crossroads town of Bastogne. Colonel Fuller's 110th Regiment of the US 28th Infantry Division occupies a ridgeline road nicknamed Skyline Drive, west of the Ore River, with about 3,200 men. Fuller is a decorated veteran from the First World War, but has a regiment which mostly consists of untested replacement soldiers. Even more alarming is the overextended front his men have to cover. One GI later joked, a man in a jeep could drive along Skyline Drive for 4 miles between strongpoints without encountering any of Fuller's troops. In the dead of night on the 15th of December, soldiers of the 77th Regiment of the 26th Volksgrenadier Division crossed the Ore River in rubber assault boats at the town of Gmund. The first men across the river fastened guide ropes over the freezing waters of the Ore for the next waves to follow. Because the American outposts have withdrawn to their warm houses for the night, the German advance establishes a bridgehead without any interference. At 3 am, the German troops begin ferrying heavy weapons to the opposite bank, and by 5:30 am, 2 full regiments are across the river. At this time, German artillery opens a sharp barrage, while the Volksgrenadiers surge forward with spotlights, illuminating the low clouds to provide artificial light. They need to cut off and destroy the American strongpoints along Skyline Drive as soon as possible to allow the armour to cross in improvised bridges. The 77th Volksgrenadier Regiment approaches the village of Hulsingen around 6:15 am. The young Wehrmacht soldiers are excited that they are finally getting the opportunity to take the fight to the enemy once again. One later recalled, "The men were extremely happy and filled with enthusiasm. Everywhere there were signs of renewed hope." However, when the German soldiers reach the outskirts of Hulsingen, the first wave of men is mowed down by concealed machine guns. The American defenders have hastily organised a defence, while the searchlights unintentionally silhouette the Volksgrenadiers in the darkness. Although the German barrage has cut telephone wires to command posts, the GIs are able to use their short-range radios to call in artillery support. The Volksgrenadiers are so close that 105mm gun crews depress their pieces and set 1 or 2 second fuses, firing point-blank into the mass of enemy soldiers. The Volksgrenadiers have unintentionally stumbled into a killing ground. This pattern is repeated at the nearby villages of Holstum, Konstum and Weiler, and the Volksgrenadiers take heavy casualties. A frustrated General Kokot shouts into the radio for his units to bypass the villages and cut off the enemy, but his mostly inexperienced men continue to blunder into small settlements, where the 28th Division infantrymen cut them down with machine gun and close-range artillery fire. The battles on Skyline Drive will last the whole day, with the Volksgrenadiers making little progress. In Gmund, German engineers have managed to construct 2 60-ton bridges over the River Ore by 4 pm, which are capable of carrying heavy vehicles. However, the bridgehead is so small that badly needed Panther and Panzer IV tanks become stuck in a traffic jam, unable to move until Hulsingen is cleared of the enemy. To the north, at the riverside village of Dasburg, another bridge has been constructed, and tanks of the 2nd Panzer Division begin rolling across. Here, the bridgehead is sufficiently large enough for the panzers to properly cross and engage the Americans. However, the driver of a Panther tank misjudges his approach, and one of the treads slips from the middle of the span, sending the panzer as well as part of the bridge tumbling into the Ore River. An apoplectic Manteuffel stews in frustration as engineers get to work repairing the damaged bridge, yet another delay the Germans can ill afford. However, the tide slowly turns as the weight of numbers begin forcing the defenders back throughout the night and the morning of the 17th of December. The GIs in Hosingen, Holstum and Konstum manage to hold out until the 18th of December, but are eventually crushed by the overwhelming German attack, unravelling the 110th Regiment's defensive position. In the battle for the village of Hosingen, the 300 American defenders suffer 7 killed and 12 wounded, while the enemy counts over 300 dead. By 3:45 am on the 17th of December, German Panzer Grenadiers are within 4 miles of Colonel Fuller's headquarters at the Hotel Clairvalley in Clairvaux. A reconnaissance unit infiltrates the town and gets into a firefight with the American defenders near the imposing Clairvaux Castle. The intruders are beaten away, but the vanguard of the 2nd Panzer Division is about to assault the town in force. At 5 am, a German Stug assault gun arrives at the top of the ridge overlooking Clairvaux and begins firing into the town. Colonel Fuller quickly dispatches a platoon of Shermans to block the winding road leading into the town, 1 tank each covering the 3 hairpin turns. At 9:30 am, Technical Sergeant James Pelletier is setting up a 50 caliber machine gun in Clairvaux Castle when he hears the rumble of tanks. He looks up at the southern ridgeline to see 10 Panzer IVs, 6 Stugs, and 30 half-tracks carrying Panzer Grenadiers starting to descend down the winding road. Pelletier and the rest of the Scratch team continue to hurriedly build defensive emplacements while the Shermans engage the enemy column. The 1st tank of the 2nd Platoon Company A, 707th Tank Battalion, fires at the leading Panzer IV, but misses. It takes one shot for the German tank to fire back and destroy the Sherman. The column continues down the road and navigates around the knocked out Sherman. Upon passing the burning tank, the lead Panzer IV suddenly explodes. The Sherman defending the 2nd hairpin bend had gone unnoticed by the Germans until it was too late. Another Panzer IV noses around the destroyed lead vehicle and manages to knock out the 2nd Sherman. The narrow winding road is making it difficult for the lumbering column of armoured vehicles to enter the town. Despite the seemingly hopeless odds, the 3rd American tank stands its ground and a close quarters duel breaks out. However, after exchanging several shots, this Sherman is also knocked out, and the German tanks push aside the burning hulk. As the panzers attempt to clear the last hairpin turn, the German tankers are surprised by 2 more American tanks still defending the town. One Sherman is firing from a ramp leading into Clairvaux Castle, making it nearly impossible to hit. The panzers desperately attempt to spread out, but the first vehicles are quickly dealt with. 2 Stugs and another Panzer IV are destroyed, forcing the rest of the column back up the winding road. They withdraw to the top of the ridge, where Panzers and Stug assault guns will fire down on the American garrison. But the initial assault by the 2nd Panzer Division has been beaten back for now. At mid-morning on the 17th of December, General Cotter calls Colonel Fuller to emphasise the gravity of the situation. He tells Fuller, "Remember, your orders are to hold at all costs. No retreat, nobody comes back. Do you understand, Fuller?" After a few seconds of silence, the Colonel responds, "Yes sir, nobody comes back." With the 2nd road impassable due to knocked out vehicles and heavy American resistance, the rest of the German tanks detour north towards Clairvaux train station. The advance is far behind schedule, and Manteuffel urges his field commanders to be more aggressive. The tanks and half-tracks of the 2nd Panzer Division stop out of sight from the tiny American crew guarding Clairvaux' northern bridge, and the Grenadiers dismount, preparing to seize the position in a direct assault. As dusk falls on the 17th of December, a battalion of Panzer Grenadiers creep down the steep embankment to the west of the bridge. Many wade through the freezing waters of the Clairvaux River, their approach going unnoticed by the defenders. An American lieutenant spots the enemy at the last second, but it is far too late. A 57mm anti-tank gun guarding the bridge is swiftly knocked out, and the Panzer Grenadiers storm the position. Leaderless, most of the GIs flee in panic, while the enemy spills across the bridge only a few hundred yards from Colonel Fuller's headquarters. With the northern route secure, the German soldiers radio the tank column to cross the Clairvaux River. Clairvaux is now cut off, but there is still a chance for the defenders to escape through the woods. In the Hotel Clara Valley, Fuller phones General Cotter's headquarters as enemy tanks advance down the street towards his position, but can only reach Cotter's Chief of Staff, Colonel Jesse Gibney. "It's hopeless here. I want permission to pull back everything I can." Gibney responds, "Impossible. Your orders are to hold in place. Don't give up any ground." A furious Fuller asks to speak to General Cotter, only for Gibney to tell him that the general is at dinner. A defeated Fuller accepts his orders but adds, "I'm telling you, it's going to be the Alamo all over again." At that moment, a German tank fires into the bottom floor of the hotel from point-blank range. Gibney asks, "What was that?" To which Fuller responds, "I've got a tank sitting in my front door firing in. I don't have time to talk anymore," before hanging up the phone. 110th Regiment's commander and several of his subordinates use the rear fire escape to get out of the burning hotel. They escape into a night lit with German flares and phosphorus shells, which set the houses of Clairvaux on fire. Fuller and what remains of his headquarters staff will wander the dark woods of the Ardennes for another 2 days until they are captured. The German breakthrough in the north of the town has dire consequences for the defenders. Panzer Grenadiers, along with Panzer IVs and Panthers, roam the streets of Clairvaux and round up American prisoners who have run out of ammunition. The last of Fuller's men in the area, along with panic-stricken civilians, retreat to Clairvaux Castle to make their last stand. Captain John Aiken and his second-in-command, Captain Clark Mackey, have rallied 102 GIs to defend the castle. Although hopelessly outnumbered, the Americans fight tenaciously. The last Sherman tank defends the ramp leading into the castle courtyard, popping out of the gate to fire at the enemy before retreating to reload. Inside the castle, a 16-year-old Belgian civilian, Jean Servet, watches an American GI playing the piano, while a sniper crouches in front of the window, firing at the attackers with a cigarette dangling from his lips. The sniper coolly dispatches one enemy soldier after another, letting the young Belgian keep the shell casings as souvenirs. Against all odds, this small band of GIs is making an impact on the larger campaign. Because the castle dominates the road leading west to Bastogne, soft-skinned trucks or open-top German half-tracks cannot pass through Clairvaux while the Americans can still offer resistance. The castle continues to hold as the sun rises on the 18th of December, but the defenders are now in desperate shape. The last Sherman in the courtyard is knocked out early in the morning, allowing the Germans to bring up Vesper self-propelled artillery pieces to pound the fortress at close range. Instead of wasting their 105mm shells on the thick castle walls, the Vespers fire at the roof, setting it ablaze. A Panther tank smashes through the main gate to the courtyard and begins firing directly into the castle's main hall. Despite the situation, the GIs continue to fight to the last round and cause considerable casualties among the attacking Germans. Sergeant Frank Kusnier later said, "They sent in swarms of infantrymen. We killed quite a few of them, and then they would withdraw." With paltry amounts of food and ammunition, the two young captains discuss the grim situation at 10 AM. When Aiken proposes surrender, Mackey angrily disagrees. "We can't afford to surrender. We've just got to fight to the last man, until we're all gone." But Aiken knows they cannot hold out much longer. His men have done their job, and now he wishes to save the lives of the terrified civilians trapped in the fortress cellar. He makes the difficult decision to surrender. Some of the NCOs are relieved that they took so many of the enemy with them. Staff Sergeant Bob Callish recalled, "We killed a bunch of them that tried to storm the castle. I don't know how many there was. It was a hopeless situation." The last message from Clairvaux Castle to the 28th Division headquarters goes out from a defiant radio operator. "We're down to our last grenades. We've blown up everything there is to blow up except the radio, and it goes next. I don't mind dying, and I don't mind taking a beating, but I'll be damned if we give up to these bastards." At the aid station, a soldier announces, "If you're a Jewish GI, throw your dog tags away because there are SS troops here." In reality, there are no SS units in the vicinity this time. By 1 PM, resistance has ceased, and the American defenders march off into captivity. Colonel Fuller's 110th Infantry Regiment of 3,200 men have faced up to the 30,000 men of the 2nd and 116th Panzer Divisions, along with the 26th Volksgrenadier Division. Fuller's regiment suffered 2,750 losses during the Battle of the Bulge, a casualty rate of 86%. However, every minute counted in the initial days of the battle, and while the 110th Infantry effectively ceased to exist, they had not panicked in the face of the German assault. General Kokott would later admit to the US Army historians that he did not expect them to put up such determined resistance. The remnants of the beaten units of the 28th Division did not give up the battle. They stayed put and continued to block the road. Both officers on the ground and historians agree that the Wehrmacht would have taken Bastogne and its road junction had the 28th Infantry Division not fought so well. Unfortunately, the 28th, along with Combat Command Reserve and Combat Command B of the 9th Armoured Division, have not received the same level of recognition as the 101st Airborne Division for their role in the Battle of the Bulge. Although all three units were recommended for Distinguished Unit citation, most officers on the award review boards did not receive the full story of their collective sacrifice. Historian John McManus wrote that it was difficult for combat historians to interview soldiers from the 28th Division, for the simple, stark reason that most had been killed, badly wounded, or captured. Most of the division's records were destroyed during the battle, leaving very little for recommendation review officers to study. In fact, Some of these same officers believed that the over 2,000 men listed as missing in action from Colonel Fuller's 110th Infantry Regiment were designated as such because they surrendered en masse, and were thus unworthy of citation. While there were mass surrenders by American units in the early days of the offensive, the 110th Regiment fought almost to the last man to delay the German advance. Another reason that the gallant defence mounted by the 28th is less well known is due to Hollywood portrayals of the Battle of the Bulge, focusing mostly on the defiant stand of the 101st Airborne at Bastogne. Hollywood tends to distort the popular knowledge and even truth of campaigns in a certain way. Despite the efforts of the 101st Airborne's commanding officers, General Cotter and Corps Commander Troy Middleton, neither the 28th Division nor the combat units of the 9th Armoured Division have ever received official recognition for their bravery in the Ardennes. Nonetheless, their sacrifice in the first days of the Battle of the Bulge is one of the many outstanding efforts which defeated Germany's last great offensive on the Western Front of the Second World War. Thanks again to our amazing patrons whose support enables us to make these videos. Thank you to all our new patrons who joined recently, and a special thanks to our patron of the week, Thomas Wang. Each week we choose our favourite Patreon comments to shout out. This week, Escape Evade says, "The 28th has been portrayed as retreating en masse in multiple works since World War II that cover the siege of Bastogne. Nothing could be further from the truth. The 110th certainly faced the worst of it, but the 109th and 112th Infantry Divisions also fought valiantly to hold back the German onslaught. If you'd like to support us, please join our Patreon at patreon.com/the operations room and get access to exclusive benefits such as early access to videos completely ad and sponsor free. We would love to have you as part of our community and really appreciate your support.